Navy, and he served our country. And I just remember him, telling stories. And one day, he showed us his stomach, and it was very, very ripped up, like scarred. And we're like, oh my gosh, Uncle Bob, what happened? And he said, I was fighting a war, and I was with my platoon, and someone threw a grenade at my troops. And he's like, I had to save everyone, and so I jumped on it, and I protected the blast from hitting all the troops and saved everyone. And so he lived with the scars of him at war. That was my great memory.
And the finish, right? Is it true?
The question is,
no.
Has anyone else heard this story?
Yes. I've seen him tell that story to children on the beach.
I heard it was not true. This is the unveiling. I heard it was not true.
It's definitely not. Was it true?
So then who was the surgeon that said
Based on what
that?
you told me, no, it's multiple surgeons over many years.
They do a good job, right there, you think?
We asked him how he survived it, and he said that if you compress it so much, it would lessen the impact.
It's a good story.
Oh, it is true. It is true.
Yeah.
Because the grenades, they
spread.
And
That's why you get very good honors, right? That's
so, Jamie, I'll let you. So, we've got two big stories I had. At least one watching Sue and Bob in a play, and then the other one was our action park story.
So go ahead.
Which one do you want?
Which one do you want? Well, let's have a cheers, though. Each story.
Each story.
Cheers.
But that's one of the biggest memories of you two singing together and really enjoying life and giving us a sense of a theater that we never had.
Yeah.
Jungle Bob!
I remember Tim used to recite all the words.
I knew his lines better than he did.
Move your blooming arse.
That one too.
Alright, so I'll go next. So, as a kid, Sue and Bob would always stop at our parents' house on the way down to Florida. And we would all get excited, and everyone would get Uncle Bob and Aunt Sue is coming, and my mom and dad would say, we got to clean the house, everything ready, and vacuum and dust, clean the sheets, and it was always special when both of you guys came down, and we always had a nice meal. So that's the one. But the other thing is that when my mom was sick, Michael and I got shipped up to New York, and we stayed with your mom for a little bit, and we stayed with Uncle Paul for a little bit. We stayed with
Mine.
Yes, we stayed with your mom. We stayed with Steven. We literally Mike and I got shipped from one sibling to the next sibling to the next sibling's house while my mom and JP and my dad and Trisha were back in Bowie. But during this trip, Sue and Bob said, hey, we're going to go to this place called Action Park. And we're like, okay, we're going to Action Park. But he said, hey, we're going to do some stuff. So we cleaned out his garage a little bit. We helped out.
I remember you going, I'd say, could you get that thing over there? You would crawl underneath and over.
So we get in this car, and I believe it was a Datsun. I think it was a Datsun.
Yes, it was a Datsun.
It was a Datsun, and we're going. And we're all ready, and we're going. And all of a sudden, we're about 5 miles away from Action Park. And his clutch on this car starts going. He said, oh, shoot. What's going on here? And so literally we are strolling into the parking lot, going up this hill, barely getting up, and then rolling back in, and he made it. He's like, yes, we made it. And I'm like, what are we doing? And he's like, we're going to the Action Park. And I'm like, well, okay. So we had a killer day at Action Park, and he didn't care. He had no idea how we're going to get home.
He went on all the rides.
He went on all the rides with us. The big, the flume chute, the tire swing.
Yeah.
I mean, he went on everything, and we were like the first ones there when the park opened, and we didn't leave until it closed. I mean, they were kicking us out, and as we leave the park. So he gets in the car. He's like, okay, let's go, Datsun. Starts it up. Nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know the distance, but I think Action Park is in New Jersey.
Yes, so it's in New York.
Long Beach, New York, off of Long Island. So he's like, okay, what are we gonna do? So we just start walking. And we start walking, and we get on the highway, we start walking, and then he's go, hitchhiking. And all of a sudden, I'll be very honest, what I thought was going on. There was this old station wagon with a bunch of hammered, drunk drivers, and the smell was a little something different there. But so they pull over, and he's like, "Hey, we got to get back to Long Beach. Can you give us a lift?" And oh yeah, come on in our car. So he hopped in between. There was like 3 girls or 2 girls, and Bob in the middle, and then there was me and Mike were in the trunk. And
What do you mean the trunk?
station wagon. Station wagon trunk. And so we don't know what we're going seatbelts. We're going along, and where you want to go, take us, to the nearest, we gotta get to the train. I'm not taking you to a train station. I'll take you to the bus stop. So we go there, and
How old were you two?
I was probably 8, and you were probably 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And we end up going to the bus. And meanwhile, no one had cell phones, and everyone used a payphone.
that's before
You didn't have
cell
any
phones.
change, so we said, like, how do you get? So we didn't call you at that point. So we hopped on this bus, and we're on this public bus, and it was a little
Sketchy.
I would say a little
New York.
sketchy.
At that time of night.
At that time
Yeah.
of night, and we're on this bus, and finally we make it to the train station. And finally he found, I think he borrowed some change to make a phone call to Aunt Sue and said, hey, we're gonna take this train into, I guess it was, what was it, probably Long Island. But then we also have
Jamaica.
no, we had to take a taxi.
subway than a taxi.
Did you
Right.
just leave the car there?
The car was there. He didn't care about the car. The car was not there. He said, we'll take care of that later. We gotta get home. So we went from hitchhiking to the bus to the train to the taxi cab, back on the train, and then Aunt Sue picked us up, I think, right there in somewhere off of
Long Beach?
Long Beach, I think.
Wow.
But it was like 5 in the morning.
Weren't you falling asleep?
I was asleep. We fell asleep on. I didn't have something on the bus.
Subway, taxi.
No, don't.
But you got to go to Action
Well,
Park.
the thing I loved about it, the biggest thing is that when he got there, he didn't even think about not going.
No, he said he wouldn't make it.
Like for me, I would be like, okay, let me figure out how I'm gonna get this car repaired. I'm gonna stop what I'm doing. And he was like, we made it! And he pulled into that, let's go! And he didn't think about any of the repercussions. He just went out and we had a blast. And then
great day.
It was a great day. You
And
know.
it was
Well, I wrote a 7th grade paper about it.
I knew you could say your college.
You know, but it was just an awesome experience. And the biggest thing is that he didn't care. He just said, we're going, we made it, we're gonna go have a blast, and whatever happens, happens. So here's to Uncle Bob. You got a story?
Say, I'll tell an Uncle Bob story.
Okay.
So, and this was funny because I remember
Is this when you met?
yes.
Yes.
So,
We're all there.
the first time I met them, I was having a party up on the rooftop of my apartment building.
I heard
in New
about
York
this
City.
too.
Yes.
St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it was St. Patrick's Day.
Down the
That was
hatch.
our excuse, yes.
Down the
And
hatch.
and I think Sue, you were there for most of the time. And I think
You're all
she
there.
might have actually been in town
We had a
too.
picture.
Yes. And you had to leave early because you were performing in a play that evening. And our job was to just make sure that Uncle Bob made it to the play in time and on time.
Seems so simple.
It seems so simple. And I just remember some point during the course of the day, Bob was having a great time. He fit in with everybody super well. Then we went down to hang out in my apartment, maybe to watch a football game or something. And I think he fell through the butterfly chair we had in there, and that's when we were like, oh, and Midget was there. That's when we were like, oh, I don't know if he's gonna make it to that play. But he got up and he made it somehow he got himself in a taxi, made it to the play. And the next day we heard that he had maybe fallen asleep during the play. He didn't make it there. But he had a wonderful time, and that was our first interaction.
I remember we were on the elevator going up to the rooftop for your party.
Yeah.
And he was saying something about Jamie and that,
You better not F this up.
I probably will mess it up because I always mess up stories.
That's what he said on the way up.
That right was what he said on the way up. He was saying something
Jamie
about,
on this,
well,
right.
they always say that you can marry a rich girl or something. What was that? Something.
No, he just said, because she was on Park Avenue.
Right, right. It was a really
Spending
nice,
all my money
it was really nice place and everything. So he said, like, well, this may be a good catch. Like they always say, it's better to marry a rich person than a poor one or something. And there was
It's just as easy to marry a rich woman as it is.
And there was another girl. Wasn't there your friend on the there? or
On the
something?
elevator, oh, jeez.
Yeah, and she said, and it got back to you. So.
Yes, it was
Yeah, I remember that.
To Uncle Bob.
good.
To Bob.
Yeah.
Bob.
Trisha.
I missed the ape story from Kim. Tell us a little monkey story real quick.
Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 animal
Not just the
stories.
monkey.
I missed that one.
Which one? You want the turkeys, the sheep, the monkeys? What do you mean?
I don't want to hear about the sheep.
Probably. I'll tell the turkey one is my favorite. It happened when I was about 7 and we were out west somewhere driving on this little tiny dirt road in the 60s, and all on the left-hand side was nothing but fields, and there were turkeys, just a few of them like wandering around. You couldn't really see, but it was big. And you know how he projected?
Yeah.
He had that voice. Yeah, that's exactly what he, so he got out of the car and he did the whole gobble 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 thing. It like reverberated on the hills, and it was just like so loud. And all of a sudden, like you felt like the ground felt like it was trembling. And then way off in the distance, you could see like all this dust. And I'm like, I was a kid, I was like, what is that, And then Dad goes, get in the car. So, like, we all jump in the car, and there's this huge stampede of thousands of turkeys, just thousands of them coming toward this little fence that was about that big. And by the time we got in the car to try to drive up, they were starting to stack up one on top of another.
Oh my
Well, they were like just like it was like what just happened in Taiwan or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what that was like with turkeys. It was insane.
It'll happen in a turkey farm during a thunderstorm.
They kill each
They'll
other.
get scared and they'll all pile up and kill each other.
Yeah, it was scary.
So Uncle Bob yelled, "Storm!"
No, we theorized later that maybe that's the road they fed them on or something, and maybe that's actually how they called them, and so they all came. Yeah. So yeah, that was a turkey story.
And then tell them about the walk. Walk this way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was 13, and awkward at 13. You're like nervous, and you don't want people looking at you and stuff. And we're in the middle of Times Square, and he grabs my hand really hard, and he never does like hard like that. And I'm like, what are you doing? And all of a sudden, he starts walking like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he's drooling even, like stuff coming up. And I'm like freaking out, and I'm like trying to get away from him, and he just like, walk like me, like just, he was doing, like, it was just horrible, like it was just like this face, like you just couldn't believe, like he just turned into this monster, in the middle of Times Square, and I was just petrified, that was it, and he did it for a long time,
Just to tease you?
Yeah, because he knew I was 13, and he didn't want me to be embarrassed.
Oh, I
He
thought
wanted
you were.
me to-
I thought you were going somewhere else with that story.
No,
Because there was
he
some-
wanted me to do the same thing he was doing.
Oh, yeah, you talking about with the
Yeah.
Is that like follow me? Walk like me.
One night he's walking in Manhattan City,
Yeah.
and there's these sketchy guys start coming up.
Oh.
He's about to get mugged. And so he realizes that these guys are going to come up and start attacking.
Oh, maybe that's why he did it. I don't
No, so then he starts pretending like he was a lunatic.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, I'm not gonna mess with this guy. I'll go for the easy target. He said, I'll go for the easy target. He said that he was like, he started acting like a crazy man. And they're like, this is the last person I would go for the salt target. And it worked.
He was trying to teach me how to survive in New York.
There you go.
He was trying to teach me how to survive in New York.
What about, any good, I want to hear it.
Okay, she has
story.
one.
So, as my mom would say, you know, Bob is just a big kid. That she always told me that. And when my son Kevin was about, I'd say 3, Uncle Bob came over. It must have been around Halloween, and he had this gigantic, big monster head, like that he put on. Well, it was like a really big. It was very authentic looking, and he put it on, and he said, "Tell Kevin to come up. Tell him to come up." And Kevin still faults me. He says I was a terrible mother because I went along with it. And I was like,
He was wearing a mask that was like awful.
I mean,
and
it was
Kevin knew it was a
really
mask.
realistic. You were there,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
but the other one was sort of a little real, and he said to you, "Is that Uncle Bob?"
Yeah, and I said,
you said,
I don't know who this is. I just kept saying, like, who is it? I don't know. He came into our house, and I started getting really into it, and then Kevin was traumatized.
He had a bunch of pretzels in his hand. I remember he threw them, and then he ran behind the couch, and he would not come out. And we couldn't get him out. He was behind the
My
chair,
dad
remember?
between traumatizing and fun. Like it was right there. Like you never knew whether it was
Well, see,
gonna.
what Kevin was concerned about too was that, remember he said to you, if they walk in the woods, there was a man in the woods that used to say, when they would walk in the woods, there was a guy who lived in the woods, and he said, oh, so Kevin said to you, is he gonna have a gun or something? Oh, don't you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
He didn't come out for like
I'm
5
hoping I
minutes.
didn't say yes. He might have a.
He was behind there for like 5 minutes. We couldn't get him out.
It was a big scene. It was a big
very
scene.
funny.
To Bob! To Bob!
And
Kevin recovered. He recovered. He looks back on that and says, "Well, that was embarrassing."
He used to make up stories and like fairy tales and stuff like that, and like I didn't understand that they were stories. Like I thought they were real. There was one of them like until I was like 23. I was totally convinced that it was a real story about like upstate and some treasure that we were looking for. And it was like just amazing things like that he was actually able to make me believe. Like must have been really gullible.
All right, Stacey, you're up.
It's true. It's the
Actually,
theater. That was I forgot the name of the guy, but he was
It's
a
a true
gangster,
story.
and he did. He during the Dutch
Are you
shows.
telling me the key he gave me was actually to where the place was?
Wait a minute! This is the big fish! It's like the person who passed away, and the stories were actually true.
Oh yeah, all the stories are true. Yeah.
Yeah, but I lost the key.
You lost the key?
I don't know. It was, he gave me this key. We went on a canoe trip up the Conchemung River to go to the house where all this treasure was. But then we couldn't make it or something, and we would go next time. But he gave me the key.
Okay, that I don't
So
know.
they
This
couldn't
is an
get-
old key.
you
That's
couldn't
always
get-
something
you couldn't
picked
get
up
the
at the thrift
treasure.
shop or something. What?
You didn't get the treasure.
I didn't get the treasure. And I lost the key. It's tragic.
So, Danny gonna
So
tell
you have
the
something.
Kentucky Derby story.
I'll tell the story.
I'll tell the story.
I shouldn't tell the story on videotape. We have to cut the videotape.
You want me to?
No, keep the video going. You tell the stories that you want to tell.
Trisha, you're red.
Yeah.
Just remember.
Let's skip to Stacey.
Susan remembered. Well, you first.
I don't have anything like earth-shattering or whatever. I just have the general, usual, really cool, blowing up the stomach, and the Donald Duck.
Oh yeah, the dumb duck.
Yes, and
Your honeymoon.
He's talking.
Your honeymoon.
oh, and well, you guys showing up on our honeymoon night.
Yeah.
That seems to be
At
a very
Rohan.
hard pattern.
On Stacey's honeymoon too?
Yeah. How many honeymoons have you been on?
think the two of you.
And singing, always singing, you know, lots of acting and singing and the A You're Adorable Bee.
Oh, that's great.
And you
Yes.
sang too.
Yeah.
Did that
Don't forget
see
Shoe
your
Fly
beautiful
Pie.
child?
Oh,
And Apple Pen Daddy makes shy side up and his stomach say howdy. Shoe fly pie and Apple Pen Daddy. I'll never get enough of that wonderful stuff. Mama, when you bake, Mama, don't be late. Mama, for my sake, go to the oven and make it ever loving. Shoe fly pie and Apple Pen Daddy makes your eyes light up and his stomach say howdy. Shoe fly pie and Apple Pen Daddy, I never get enough of that wonderful stuff.
My sister.
Wait, say that again, Uncle Steve. I missed that. What was that again? Tell me, you met him for the first time, because when?
When did you meet him?
When Susan had brought him to the house,
Yeah.
she was on the front porch,
Yeah.
and I opened the door to come out, and he was kissing my sister. Who is this guy?
Did you slug him?
Why did you give him $1?
That is right, because everybody knows Bob likes, he liked to travel, he liked new experiences, he liked to...
Nude experience?
He was a filmmaker.
I was heading for a reunion with my fellow
was ahead of his time.
And I asked him, since I was going down there, I'm traveling along, I said, well, Bob, you want to come to my reunion? Yeah, I didn't even yeah, I'd love to go. So he went on the reunion with me and everything, and had a ball, really enjoyed himself. And,
He wasn't even a Marine.
No, he was around the table. Everybody was getting up and raising. We had judges and we had people ran for Congress. And we're going around the table, and I had to introduce it. This is my brother-in-law. He's Navy, but he's a good Navy, don't
He told me once that he was at a party in New York City and a bunch of Marines hung him by his feet out a window.
Really?
Because he was Navy.
But they didn't let go, did they?
But they did hang him out the window by his
Did they?
feet. That's what he told me once.
He was probably
Yeah, maybe that's another one of his
He was
stories.
probably
Big shame.
really drunk and it was during Vietnam and he was probably running his mouth, so.
Yeah.
Steve, what about the, you're in the Marine Corps, and he said that's a department
Oh,
of
no,
the
he
Navy.
was the one that told me
Yeah,
that stuff.
Department
He
of the
says,
Navy.
you know, the Marines are part of the Department of the Navy, the men's department.
Tomorrow!
Jabba! Yeah.
I remember he liked to go to the beach and he liked to I have a good one on that one about going to the beach probably a year before he died. Right before COVID, we went down
Oh,
to
you're right.
Williamsburg,
Williamsburg.
and he was
Yes.
using a walker
And a
and
wheelchair.
a wheelchair.
Oh,
And
Yes.
we went to the beach
This is
in
the-
Virginia Beach,
Body's
and he was body surfing. I feel like giving me a lot of anxiety.
Well, wait a minute, he was
I
body
know,
surfing while I was holding him and someone else was holding him.
I think
No.
we, I don't know that you were the.
So
was there.
yeah, so he would ride the wave,
Yeah, and you guys would like.
and
pull
he
on the
couldn't
back.
get
He
up,
couldn't get up.
and we had to help him up.
So I remember he was in the chair and the
Yeah.
wave came and he just went.
Yeah.
Well, that was North Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
got
that
seen.
was Williamsburg. I thought that was.
No, that was a different one.
No, that was different.
You did it with I think my dad was there, and I kept being like, Dad, go! You need to help JP.
There's one point where I almost couldn't lift him up. I'm like,
I remember like 5 different people on the beach got up and helped us.
In North Carolina, he had the chair,
Right.
and he got up and he was getting in, and he gave everybody a good show, and then the back of the beach, his bum. But he loved the ocean. He goes, I just want to go to the ocean. And that was the first time I was actually just seeing him a little bit older and everything, which was tough. But he says, I love the beach, I love the water. We're going down there. And so he did it. He went through it. He got into the water, and then he got a ride up from the Coast Guard.
That day he had
Beach patrol.
He had a UTI, and so he was not himself. He was really a lot worse than ordinary.
That's what he has.
But he was a great a body surfer. And we used to always get on his back. All the kids,
Yeah.
you put your hands on his shoulder, and he would just sail you in like the surfboard. And then we would get out, and then he would get up, and everyone would think like, where did he come from?
Like you didn't get wet, but he was like completely under the water and like taking in.
Yeah, it was a great.
What about Nancy and Bruce? Give us a Bob story.
Well, I just remember the songs, like, you know, and the happy-go-lucky attitude. I mean, they would remember, and it took me a long time to figure this song out. Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a killy ivy too, wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's right.
Bob.
To Bob.
You know what all those songs are? A lot of them are vaudeville. Some of them are from really old movies, but they're all show tunes, those songs that we just sang. They're very old, a lot of them.
But they're classics, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, I heard Apple Pandemic.
well, that, yeah, but like some of them I think were vaudevillian even. I think one of my uncles was in vaudeville or something.
Probably
Old movies.
And how about the whole script of Outfit Ladies?
I was gonna say that.
That was the best.
When he was angry at Susan, he used to talk about that.
Women are irrational. There's no,
Yes.
Exasperating.
Yeah, he did the whole speech from why can't a woman be more like a man?
right, exactly.
Oh yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
about next generation? Amanda, give us a little Bob story.
I would say definitely the Donald Duck impression, the stomach inflating, popping. But yeah, just singing. You and him would always be in the greatest mood and bring good energy to everybody.
And Sue and Bob.
Didn't care, and it's awesome. Yeah.
To Bob.
To Bob.
When Sue and Bob and Steve came out to North Dakota, we took him to the Medora musical. Mary was just a baby at the time. And most of the time when you put her in a car seat, she falls asleep.
Oh yeah.
But the Medora musical is like a campy country and western show, and it's good for kids. And so she was up the whole time and didn't fall asleep. She was entertaining everything. But when we got into the car, she was way past her bedtime and just could not handle it. And was screaming. And it was like incessant screaming. And I think, did we stay in Dickinson? I don't think we stayed in
I remember what happened. She was screaming, and you put on the music, the choir.
We
And you had a
bought
choir.
this thing of Braun Journey, which was like harp music.
It sounded like
Religious harp music, and it just went
it sounded like Angel's choir,
Right.
and she
But that
just
didn't
immediately.
work. So then Bob started to sing,
Oh.
and then finally that was the
Adorable, be
yeah.
you're so beautiful, see your kids full of time.
You know, I still do that. I was coming out of church, and this kid was screaming, and I started singing. Immediately stopped singing. I stopped screaming. So it's ingrained in us.
You're the one I was. Jay, we're like Jack and Jill. Kay, you're so kissable. L, you're the love light in my eyes. M, N, O, P, I could go on all day. Q, R, S, T, alphabetically speaking, you're okay. You make my life complete. V means you're very sweet. W, X, Y, Z. It's fun to come through the alphabet with you to tell you what you mean to me.
Robbie, what do you got
I
story about? Go ahead,
told
Trish.
this one to Jack already, but Bob and Sue came to see me in Germany, and I had a new bed. Should I say this or not? Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, we had a new bed, and Bob comes out in the morning. He said, "I christened your bed." I was like, "What?" I was in my input. TMI, Dad.
Why would you say that?
Well, I remember.
Hey, sure remembers that night.
I remember on one of these trips, you know, they have New Hollywood games and stuff, which always is so sappy. But we participated, and you had to answer certain questions. And so one was, what do you say when you want, when you want to get together or something like that, So we apparently answered it about, do you want to christen whatever the place. So the next time on the bus driver said, please don't christen in front of everybody. So it was funny. But we won the game. We won the newlywed game.
So this was Rotenburg. Rotenburg's a town, I don't know if it's 500 years old, but it was saved from bombing during World War II because the American Air Force pilot, his grandmother had a picture of Rotenburg on there. And it was on the trade route for many years, but then it got off the trade route, and so nothing had changed for 300 years. They had no money to change anything. So it was the same flooring, the same walls, the same everything. But there was a town square, big town square, lots of tourists, all things, and they had somebody playing music, and Bob and Sue started dancing. And all the tourists, hundreds, it was a lot. They made a whole circle and square and started clapping for Bob and Sue. And they came up and asked for dance lessons and and they were just dancing, but people thought they were part of the act. They thought that was
I saw a video from Uncle Mike's wedding or something where, what is it?
Nancy, we had just been in a car accident, and you have pictures, I think, in your album of both of us on our crutches, dancing on the floor with our crutches, right?
And then you had this green ribbon you used to accent your crotches.
Yes, my neighbor took some fabric from my dress and put it over the handles of the crutches, so they would look real fancy. So they were
very coordinating.
Yes, very coordinating. Exactly. Yeah.
Bob.
Jules, do you have any stories?
Juliana.
I love doing his hair. We would always do his hair. And
Hair?
pictures. Well,
He wouldn't
on the side.
On the
on the side. We just put in ponytails, little ponytails.
Yeah. And then this party, Bob's my uncle t-shirt. Everyone was twinning. That was so much fun. And
That was
my favorite one. Yes, that was fun.
And this is
Bob's your uncle.
Yes. Back to him being a swimmer. I remember one time, he went underwater, and then I was like, okay, now where is he? Because he was under for over a minute, and I was like, Uncle Bob, you good? And he was just still underwater, and all of a sudden he pops up, and he was just down there for such a long time. I didn't know what was going on.
He goes his breath a long
He goes for a long time.
That's good.
It was scary.
Susan has one more. Susan has one more.
Jamie has.
No, I was going to give one to Jack. I was going to take Jack. Jack's up. Jack's up.
There's so many good stories. I don't know. I think when I think of Bob and Sue, I think about how generous they always were with always wanting to make sure everyone's having a good time at a party. When they came to our house for holidays, I was saying this before to you, they'd always entertain after dinner, and the kids would really look forward to that, and your kids as well. And they'd be like, okay, what are Bob and Sue going to do this time? And then fast forwarding, no one's talked about Bob's love of the Mets yet, and how passionate he was about that. And one time I remember going to a Mets game with him and my dad and Johnny. Johnny was about 10. And there were these guys behind us who were drunk, and they were yelling the whole game and really annoying us. And at one point, Bob and my dad turned to me and they said, how big are those guys behind us? And my dad was 85, and Bob was probably, 70-something. And so I had all I could do to keep them from going around and challenging me. But that, Bob was not going to take any nonsense from anybody. Anybody that's going to prevent him from having a good time.
I remember at one of the Yankees games or something, Reggie Jackson was on, and so he was yelling, and there was a whole Yankee contingent around him. And so he was going, Reggie! And then he fell through a chair. Everyone exploded because they were, he got his comeuppance.
He must have done that at every baseball game, because I have one of those stories too, where he was just, he was riling the crowd all around him, He was at Yankee Stadium for a Yankees game, and he was, saying how bad they were. And then when they won, he screamed, I knew you could do it! I knew you could do it! And, he had the whole audience, he had his audience around him. in the stands there.
I have a,
Bob.
To Bob.
I have a shirt of his that says, "Of course I'm right. I'm Bob."
Now, one thing, Michael, I missed your. Where's Michael? Oh, okay. I wasn't recording your first story. Would you mind giving this? I hate to do this, but you'd be the only. Your story wasn't there. A reprise. It was a good story.
No, that was the exactly. Make it a little bit better. Hold on, give more to drink. Exactly. Uncle Bob. Theater, right?
Yes.
That's where, growing up in Bowie, Maryland, wasn't a lot of theater. I don't think I saw a play when I was growing up, and just really getting exposed to that as a young child, and going up to New York, and we used to all pile in the car and drive straight up there, and one time it was My Fair Lady. Thank you, Jamie, for reminding me about seeing them and how the production went. So it was really fascinating to see the practice runs and the props and just how they overdid it. And that's where Uncle Bob really just his passion for the theater, a passion for singing, as we've all heard tonight. It was just really fascinating and hilarious. I think that's another thing. There were a lot of funny lines within the play, and it was just a great experience to see him and the passion he had for theater.
So the first theater, I think, show we went to, I remember, I'll never forget, was they said, there was one line, it was like, "Dover, move your bloomin' ass." And like, we were like little kids, and we're like,
as a kid, that was sure.
We thought it was like the funniest thing ever. And it was like,
And of course, we probably said it the whole weekend.
When you were up at the beach, you were, I guess, staying with us, or a couple of you anyway, and you were playing we had a nude allowance on our beach at the time. In Long Beach.
Oh, that's right.
In Long Beach. And so the boys were starting to get tumbling and get closer to this blanket where this girl was. So then they came back and we said, we asked them, and they said, they had no boobies, right? Remember? You said something like that.
We were young and we were.
Uncle Bob told a story. I don't know how true it is.
No, he said he watched it.
But it was a nude beach.
Yeah, in Italy.
Oh,
in
that
Italy.
was, well, that was
and he had, he was true.
Take the video camera off now.
It's a great story.
I was with him.
Okay, so he had it. Okay, there's water over here. So he had a camcorder, like a VHS. Yeah, you can have that. And he's walking around, but he doesn't want to seem like he's filming anything. So he's just carrying it along the beach. And then he goes home and he pops in the VHS. And he said he watched 3 hours of sand.
Sand.
It has to come up.
You didn't hear.
He's waiting for it.
It was 3 hours of sand.
But what happened in that time was that we were, we put it away, the VCR, right? And then I see this beautiful waterfall coming down from this thing. And I said, "Bob, get the camera, that's really nice." We turned around the corner and there's a woman nude feeding her boyfriend, whatever, grapes and stuff like that. And we didn't have the camera out. And I said, "See, you wouldn't take that. So this is your punishment. You couldn't take it."
That was easy.
Right, yeah.
That's where Bob is now.
Uncle Bob.
Yes.
Tricia wants me to talk about a famous picture that she has. You have it, right? Or that was taken. Bob had a problem intestinally. And so he used to fart a lot, So I always said Benjamin Franklin has a book out called Fart Proudly. It's a legitimate book, right?
Fart Proudly.
Yes, Fart Proudly. So Bob's friend, Ed Goldman, used to call it Fozgene, every time, because he would wait till he was in the car or something.
That was a World War I chemical weapon,
right?
And that's what they called his farts.
Right.
Chemical weapon.
And there's so many stories about that. But we have someone gave him. Who gave him the underpants?
I did.
You gave him the underpants that said explosive
I bet my dad in rear, yeah.
explosive in there or
Danger.
something. And so he wore these, and then we have a picture of him wearing these, and I'm going,
Yeah.
He
And
wanted
you
to
have that,
show them
right.
off, so he just
Yes, he
brought
was
his
showing.
trousers. You got to see my underwear.
right.
It said danger, explosive
Thank
gas
you.
in there.
Explosive gas.
It was.
Do you remember the T-shirt that we had with ethnic humor, front and back?
Oh, yeah. Italian.
Oh, yes.
Tell about it.
Oh, right. Do you
Oh,
remember
he
what
had,
it is?
it was called, it said Casanova on the front. In fact, Tony got it. We gave it to
Did he?
Tony.
Oh.
Yes, he wanted the shirt. He wanted the shirt, so we gave him the shirt. But it was funny because it had a whole big thing on the back, and he would be on the elevators, and people wouldn't let him off the elevator. They'd say, wait a minute, I'm leaving the shirt on the back. And I think if I can remember, it said, heaven is where the police are British, the French are lovers, the Italians are the restaurant or food cooks and stuff, and
The Germans were police. No, the Germans were mechanics.
the Germans were the mechanics, and the French were the lovers or something. The Swiss,
And the Swiss
the Swiss were the organizers, and the French were the lovers. Hell is
That's
where
in the back.
yes, it all said, and then hell is where the British are the food. The
German policemen.
Italians are in charge of logistics.
Yes,
The French are the mechanics.
and the
Swiss are lovers and the Germans are the police.
and he wanted to wear it in Germany. I said, no. I said, don't wear it. You're gonna get. That was a great. And we bought it in Hawaii. Hawaii is not known as a cattle place. It was a cowboy cattle place up in the high district of Hawaii, and it was a place called Casanova. And the only other time I saw it was in the same shirt in Florida, but you couldn't buy it. It was the waiters were all wearing them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
What
that's
about,
where we
what about
bought
Robbie? You have a story, Uncle Bob's story?
Just a brief story. I was in New York with my grandpa Shay. While my parents were adopting Molly, and Uncle Bob just took me to the beach and would, pick me up and down when the waves were coming in. So that was
Yeah.
To
Bob.
I remember Fish and I came before we were married to the Republican National Convention in 2004, which was in New York.
Yeah.
And we got tickets for Bob and Sue and Ginny and Jack
Yep.
to come to the national convention. And Steve, did you come too?
Yes,
I think,
Steve was
yeah.
there.
And Tony made sure that Trish and I stayed in the same hotel room, but we were not married. So Tony came to make sure that there wasn't anything else going on. But in advance of the convention, of course, we were there a few days, and so we had time. And I can't remember if we went to the.
You took my dad to a Republican convention.
I did. And
Yes.
they had a
Oh
wonderful
my
time.
God.
The night that Giuliani spoke. This is before Giuliani lost his marbles with Trump. But Giuliani was like a hero because it was after 9/11. It was the first national convention after 9/11, and he was great. Everybody loved him.
There wasn't
And it was
crime
a
in New
wonderful
York.
night. But prior to the convention, I can't remember if it was Aunt Ginny and Jack that invited us over to the Cabana on Long Beach, but we got to go, and Bob and Sue had us over. But I remember we invited our friends Wayne and Beth Stenjum, who is the Attorney General of North Dakota, who most people wouldn't think, that the Attorney General would come with you. But I said to Wayne, would you like to come? We're going to go to the beach in Long Beach. Sure! And so they came with us, and we had the best time.
I remember Steve came with us, and he was wearing his uniform, and everywhere we walked in New York, they said, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. Welcome, remember? But we were given instructions at the convention to not make a scene over anything. So a lot of times people would get up for the Republicans, and we just sat there very quietly.
It was a neat deal. The Bishop of Fargo, who's a friend of ours, he was at our wedding, was at the convention. He wasn't there for the convention, but he was there for the tennis championship or something like that. And so I contacted him. And I said to the governor, who at the time was our U.S. Senator John Hoeven, I said, we got to get him on the floor with you. And so, they spanned the crowd looking for anybody who's interested. And so Chris Wallace was on television and said, "There's a priest." "No, he's a bishop. He's wearing a pectoral cross." Well, it was the Bishop of Fargo, and he was standing next to John Hovind because we gave him our floor pass.
I remember because Trisha came to New York to get her wedding gown. Or look
She
for
bought
a
it.
wedding gown. She
It
bought
cost the same amount as my mom's, who bought it 50 years earlier.
Wow.
In Minneapolis.
Well, I remember, I wrote a whole story about it because we first went to Macy's and we went in there and we said, "Oh, do you have anything on sale?" And the guy went, remember, he pointed over. First of all, you had to have an appointment. We didn't have an appointment, so it was sort of, he was very, and I said, "Well, is there anything we could look at? Is there anything for sale?" It was very, so we looked and we actually, that, you ended up coming back to that. But then we went to a garment center and we went upstairs and stuff and they had these, I don't know, Oriental place. First of all, there was an Israeli place and she had all these racks of clothes and stuff. And I said, "Oh, how much is this dress?" And she said, "Well, it depends on how much we like you." And then we went and there was a Korean place and there was this Asian person sewing off sequins off in a corner somewhere in a closet. Remember? And they said, "Oh, we could make anything, short sleeves, long sleeves, whatever they were going to make for you." It was quite an experience in terms of New York and the whole process. But that's how I got my gown, was at the garment center. And that's why I brought you over to see it.
We bought ours. She bought hers at Macy's.
Yes, we went back and got the same, the dress.
The one that was on sale.
Going to New York to Key West. So we went to a place down in Key West called Sloppy Joe's. And it was an Ernest Hemingway bar.
Oh, wow.
Of course, Uncle Bob, we were all going out there, and they loved him there because he kind of looked like Ernest Hemingway. And so everybody was coming up like, "I love you, like you're great." And so it was just part of the experience of traveling with Uncle Bob. He had traveled.
So remember, we landed and we got our rental car and we're coming out of the garage, and to get out of the garage, it was just this like whirl, like screw, like to get down, and all of a sudden it looks like he's like gonna run in the wall, like in every turn. It was like, oh my! And we're like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I can't see." We're like, "Well, he can't be driving."
Oh my God! How many years did he drive completely blind? Like how many years before he finally traded in his keys?
He used to brake and then go off the brake.
Yes.
Oh,
So we were in, I don't know where, Florida or something.
You were riding the brake.
And he's doing this back and forth, and they stopped us. A guy came along. A policeman stopped us. Yeah, he thought, and he started talking to him, and he realized he wasn't drunk because he said, "I noticed you were braking, and there was no one in front of you."
So that was in Key West, but in New Orleans, we must have been young, right out of college, couldn't pay for much. And so we all fly into New Orleans, and we all couldn't get a rental car. So he went in the car, and we're like, "Can you give us a ride?" He's like, "Sure." And so he pulls up to the terminal, and like there's like 15 of us, and there's one rental car.
And it was like an escort.
I think it had his sunroof.
It had a sunroof because 3 people were hanging out.
And he's like,
"Come on in.
Come on in." And so next thing you know, there's like 5 people in the back, like 3 people in the front. There's like people are hanging out of like the sunroof. And we're driving down, and he keeps putting on the brakes. I'm like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah.
But it was
he doing it on purpose?
no, it's just the way he drives. It was just like
a seasick kind of thing. It was like this.
I remember they got to the hotel, and then we started getting out, and they could not believe how many.
it was like a clown car. It was like,
But when he was invited to go down, I guess you were the first one probably, right? And so people said to me, "You're going to let him go?"
oh yeah, that's right.
And I said, "What do you mean?" Yeah, I said, "He's going to go." And they said, "Oh, he'll probably be the chaperone." I said, I don't think so.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to be captain of the fun schedule.
Let's just say a lot of the young ones went to bed earlier than Uncle Bob.
True story.
Dad, wait,
Well, he was a legend on Bourbon Street.
Dad, wait.
Like he was out till like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Jamie's bachelor party?
Yep.
I found that CD with the pictures. I don't know why anyone would put pictures on a CD. While you guys were on JP's bachelor party, I was trying to go through CDs and, you know, see what had music on it and label things appropriately. And found a lovely, lovely surprise of pictures. And I promptly shredded. I debated putting it in my Jamie Blackmore pile. It was already so full.
Was there a picture of him and Billy Petzel by any chance?
There were lots of I was like on JP and I was like, so found this.
Billy Petzel lost his combo.
We're at Yankee Stadium, and I'm a kid, young, probably, I don't know, 10, 9, 10, something like that. And he has to go to the bathroom. And so he has me wait outside, like in the hallway place. And then all of a sudden, men just start pouring out of the bathroom, holding their faces like this and going, and they're just pouring out. And I'm like, well, that's Dad. That's my dad. That's because I knew that's what it was.
Well, we were.
No, nobody is like as bad as.
I would assist him.
You're giving me a huge compliment.
I would assist him occasionally on the filming.
Seriously.
You know, when he would take the kids' pictures and they were short on people, they'd call me and say, "Could you help them?" So we went to this upstate. It was a pre-kindergarten or something, and they were so cute. These little kids, and they were all in a circle, and they're playing and they're clapping and they're doing their thing. And Bob says, "I'm going to go to the restroom." So I go, "Okay, fine." So I'm watching these kids, and they, and then suddenly. And I realized, I looked, and the bathroom is right across from where they were sitting.
But it could travel,
Yes, and it was just, I said, oh my God, it was Bob. It was just
One time we went to Jamie's house, and he farted in the car like right before we went into Jamie's house, and we closed the car up, and we were in there for like 2 hours. We had dinner and everything, and then we came out. For some reason, you were going to drive with us. I remember you opened the car and you went, oh. It was still there 2 hours later. It had a half-life of like, I don't know, like some like radiation or something.
Well,
Your Uncle Bob.
You used to say how much that I loved him because he would get.
He'd hotbox her.
Jamie did that.
He would under the sheets.
He would go under the bed. He would, instead of ahead of time, he would come under the sheets and do it. And I was like, oh.
I thought that was marital abuse. I thought that was cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes, Bob.
That was terrible.
My dad should go to jail for some of his farts. They sure didn't be